Welcome back to another Synthplex 2022 podcast. My name is Florentino Buenaventura, the host, and I am here with a man that did the soundtrack to my childhood. Well, at least some of the movies I used to watch and still do. We are here with Alan Howarth. I'm sorry, I was going to say Howarth, but
No, Howarth is correct.
Oh, Howarth. Okay.
Yeah, like how much you worth? Howarth.
So funny. I'm the worst with names. I don't know how I became a podcast host.
That's right. We're here.
But if you don't know the name, you know the music. Halloween, Escape from New York, Star Trek. They Live. I mean, it's an incredible body of work that you've had, quite often in the action horror genre. And we just had you here at Synthplex last night doing the most amazing performance of all your material. I put it out and did a little clip of it, a Halloween dance.
Yeah.
So Mike Myers was out there, breakdancing. He would have breakdanced to this. But it was amazing. You had the drummer from
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz. Yep. I got tongue-tied there. And we just had Steve Donato here with us talking. So, let's start off with the music and the passion, because I was hearing you talk to some folks. We are on the show floor, folks, so if you hear background noises, you know why, because we're in the thick of it here at Synthplex. So tell us about the passion that you have for the music and what drove last night.
Well, since I was a little kid, I was an artist.
Yeah.
And I actually expressed myself in paint and drawing and all this other stuff. But at the same time, my dad had an accordion up in the attic, and I found that thing. And and the breathing of the thing. And not necessarily the notes yet, but just the sounds it made. I was tranced out. I mean, I went to the thing. I actually took accordion lessons when I was 5, so I had a little bit of stuff, but that didn't last very long. Then picked up in grade school, when they have the school band and they're sending the notes home. Your kid has musical talent, trying to rent you instruments. So I looked at the school band. I really wanted to either do guitar or piano, but that wasn't offered. So I looked at the school band and go, what's cool to me? Saxophone. So I was doing alto sax, and then eventually went to tenor and baritone. So I was a sax player in high school. And through the oddest of circumstances, this girl that's I'm the president of the art club now and all this other stuff. She says, hey, my buddy Dave's got a band, and I know you play saxophone. Would you like to go play in the band at the sock hop?
Yeah.
So this timeline, this would be like 1965, 64, 65. Okay. And so I did the sock hop, and I played dance music. Da, 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 da. At the end of the night, Dave handed me $80.
Wow.
And my eyes went wide. Like, wait a minute.
That was big chunky money for those
That
days.
was like, I sat here for 3 hours, played music, you give me $80?
Some of these players are lucky to get $80 today.
Yeah. Art, I'm starving. I made $80. I'm going for music. So I followed up. I pestered my mom to buy me a bass guitar.
Yeah.
I think it was a Kingston bass, and I got my Sears Silvertone, single 15 amp, and started playing in local bands. Worked my way up through the local bands. This was in Cleveland. I'm the Cleveland kid. Eventually, the band, one of the bands, the popular band was called the Tree Stumps. That band modulated to a band called the Silk. The Silk was produced by Bill Simzik, who was producing Joe Walsh and the James Gang at the same time.
Okay.
The one guy that came out of that band, the Silk, was Michael Stanley. He was like a big local star. So that got me out of the local band business, and the frustration in the band business. What happens is the band gets together, even make a record. If the record's not a hit, the band breaks up and everybody hates each other. So I started acquiring gear. I was really into gear.
Yeah,
and that's where we're going with this stuff. And so I worked in a music store. I was a guitar man. I used to, hot rod humbucks and all this other stuff, and put new tuning heads. I should probably go to Purgatory for as many beautiful vintage guitars that I modified.
Oh man.
But
that's
what the guy wanted. He wanted to do it, so I did it. So in the music store upstairs was now a Mini Moog and an ARP 2600, and I went up there because it was on display. I started fooling with this stuff. I'm like, whoa, I got to have a synthesizer. This is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I bought an EML 101, which was sort of a Mini Moog.
Okay.
But
because you got me on that one. I hadn't heard about that.
But it had a patch bay up on the top, and it was a 3 oscillator thing. but it also had dual. I could play two notes. Like, two notes
wow.
instead of one. So I went for that. But that sort of got me caught up in this stuff. Eventually, I did my own original band. I went from playing bass to doing a guitar player and writing some songs, being the front man. And my band, my emulation was I was Pink Floyd.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like the Pink Floyd of Cleveland. And the band was called Braino, like Drano, but for brains, Braino. And we were already in quadraphonic. I had echoes and everything. I had a Leslie on my guitar. I had my synthesizer and just a plain old bench oscillator to fool around with, all into echoes and stuff like that. And we were the house band in this little club in Cleveland called the Smiling Dog Saloon.
Okay.
And the owner of the club, he was booking jazz guys, national jazz acts, on like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as they were going between New York and Chicago.
Okay.
And because I had the sound system, every Tuesday, Wednesday, we do sound for stuff. This band comes in, Weather Report. And it's Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter and Daum Romao at the time was the percussionist, and Eric Gravatt was on drums, and Miroslav Vitos was the bass player.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, I did my Pink Floyd number on Weather Report. I gave him echo and all this stuff. And I go, who the hell are these guys? And the club owners, you should take one of these guys with you. So my sound guy, Brian Risner, had tape cues. I had a job at the music store. He didn't, so he went out on the road with Weather Report.
Wow.
So this would be 71, 72, gets to be 76. Brian's now on the road with them. Weather Report gets their heavy weather album. They get upgraded to... They get upgraded to a national tour, and Brian says, hey man, you should come out and take care of Joe's keyboards, because it's now like 5 or 6 synthesizers, setting them every day is pretty beastly. So I went out and Weather Report got, because they were LA based, got me to LA.
Yeah.
And so I'm into synthesizers, I'm doing Joe's keyboards. I'm like the butler. I set it all up and I say, okay, Joe, it's ready, you can play now. But I meet all these people, the Miles Davis, the Joni Mitchells, the bass player is now Jaco Pastorius.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And Peter Erskine, so it's a golden era. And having listened to those guys play for 300 times, different every night, I'm impressed by improvisation, how you could live music, not play music by rote, but living music. And so that's burned into me. So if you talk about my roots, it's Pink Floyd and Weather Report improvisation is where I'm at in my own personal music expression.
Yeah.
So the funniest of circumstances, another friend of mine, Pax Lemon from Cleveland, is now working at Paramount Pictures in Transfer Bay. 2 guys are behind him talking about how they need somebody who knows about synthesizers. And he turns around and goes, oh man, you got to talk to my buddy Alan, man. He works with Weather Report. He knows all about synthesizers. And they go, Weather Report, is that the one at 7 o'clock or 11 o'clock? I mean, they don't know. Weather Report.
Yeah.
But they took my number and called me. I go down, I meet him. It's Richard Sanderson and Stephen Flick, who are eventually Academy Award winning sound effects supervising guys, in their own right. But we were all kids at the time. And they asked me to make an audition tape. I said, what do you want to do? He says, make us the sound of the Starship Enterprise going from Warp 1 to Warp 7. Okay. Go back, I got a little TAC 4-track tape recorder and a Prophet 5. Okay. And in the Prophet 5, I dial up through the polymod, this tonality. And the design, I couldn't just go, it'd be over too fast. So I made it layers and layers and layers. I turned it into the tape, and that became the sound of the Enterprise.
Wow, that tape?
That tape. First Star Trek motion picture. That's what they were doing with Star Trek. So all of a sudden, I won the gold card. I got into movie business. Huge change in life. Now, all of a sudden, I wasn't on the road. I wasn't living on beer and pretzels.
Yeah.
I was providing service for a much bigger production as opposed to my band trying to get out there.
Yeah.
Right? So I could eventually get married and have kids and buy houses and cars and stuff like that.
That's crazy talk about rock and roll,
yeah? Yeah. So,
Awesome.
All the way to there. So the next blessing is the picture editor from the first Star Trek, a fellow named Todd Ramsey, and his next project is Escape from New York.
Oh, yeah.
And I had been giving Todd my music and stuff like that. I'm chumming, I'm promoting, right? Yeah. And he goes, I bet you John Carpenter probably get along really well. You guys are the same age. He's from Kentucky, you're from Ohio. So John comes over to my little dining room studio, and I play him some sounds, and my rig's now grown a little bit. I got 2 avatars. There's an ARP Quadra, Prophet 5. I got an 8-track tape recorder, Moog vocoder.
Yeah.
And I actually had a pedal steel guitar too that I used for sound effects.
Oh, okay.
I didn't play the shit out of it, but it was great to have the slide and the
Yeah.
thing. I made lightning out of that stuff. It was great to beat on, and I also had a cello that I had a Barkus Berrio on, and that was a sound effects to me. I'm not playing concerts, but I had all this stuff. So he sits down and it looks at me like casually, goes, "Yeah, let's do it." That was it. No agent, no stuff. It's 2 guys, cigarette and coffees, and let's do it.
That's cool.
So my first film score was Escape from New York.
Wow.
So
did you realize that it was going to be that iconic when you were
No.
Because it started off almost B movie-esque, but it was so cool. I mean, as a kid, that was such an influence on me as a way of, what my taste for movies were going to be throughout my life.
Yeah, and obviously, John Carpenter is a musician himself. His
Yeah.
dad was a professor of music. He was a concert violinist, so he was trained, but he wanted to make movies. But for him, he used to tell me, doing music for his own movie was like vacation. He could turn off the phone.
Yeah.
He could just be the composer and not deal with all the other stuff you have to deal with in making a movie. So it was so much fun. So it was a most pleasurable experiences.
How old were you at that time when you were doing that?
This would be 1980, 81. I was 32, 33.
Just a young pup, man.
We were just pups. Not knowing was good, though. Probably if we knew too much, we'd get in trouble.
Yeah, you overthink it.
Yeah, exactly. So I became his guy. And so we're finishing Escape from New York. We're at the console doing some mixes. And he talking about what he's doing next is, I'm going to be busy. I'm doing this movie, The Thing. I'm going to be really busy. And they want to make another Halloween, so you're going to do Halloween. Like a class assignment. Like, you do Halloween, I'm going to be busy doing The Thing. So he hands off Halloween. Well, that was Halloween 2. That score consisted of using John's original Halloween 1, the iconic score.
Yeah.
It was on a 16-track, so I transferred it to a 24-track, so I had open tracks. And I just dubbed in more synths on top of his stuff, which gave it this goth feel. So there's a difference from the simplistic piano Halloween 1 to Halloween 2. A lot of people like that Halloween 2 goth, darker Halloween version. And it went out there. He came back. He did from The Thing. We did some cues, some supplemental cues, because Ennio Morricone did the score.
Yeah.
But it needs some more stuff. We supplemented. Then we did Halloween 3. And in Halloween 3, John and Deborah didn't want to make any more sequels. They thought it was over.
Yeah.
And they tried to they killed him at the end of, in theory, at the end of 2.
Yeah. But he never dies.
But he never dies. So then Halloween 3, it was going to start the idea of Halloween anthology annual.
Yeah.
So Halloween 3 is actually a fine movie. If it had been called Season of the Witch and not Halloween, it would have been fine. But because Michael Myers wasn't there and people complained, Halloween 4, he's back.
Yeah.
And I went on to do Halloween 4, Halloween 5, Halloween 6.
Yeah.
And I was the go-to guy. They're going to another movie, you do it.
Yeah.
And each director had his own flavor of what he wanted. So Halloween 4, he kind of cut me loose. And that was like me doing Pink Floyd does Halloween. Halloween 5, the director wanted to go back to the original, so it's a very piano score.
Yeah.
But because I'm now in samplers, it's not just having one piano. I got 10 pianos.
Yeah.
And I'm...
What sampler did you use on that one? You remember?
I'm trying to think about this now.
Because this would already been like...
This would be like 86, 87. I already had my synclavier.
Okay.
So it was the synclavier was the main axe at that point. But I still had a room. In the room there was an Emulator 2, an Oberheim 4-voice, 2 ARP avatars, LM1, Lindrum 2, SB12, and then on the other side was a Kurzweil 250.
Yeah.
And now the synclavier was the king. And I had the MIDI out of the synclavier.
I love the color of the 250s. The Kurzweil just had its own little flavor.
Yeah,
it was good.
And also...
Still is, actually, some ways.
And there was some nice samples in the Kurzweil, the original Kurzweil. The piano in that was really good.
Yeah.
It was Forte was a great piano.
Yeah.
So that was the rig. Had an analog 24 track. Had it synchronized with videotape, so we could actually run the movie and score the picture, which Carpenter loved. He used to call that electronic coloring book. Because before that, they used to do it to a stopwatch. I need to cue this minute 32. He'd map it out and transfer it and go to a movie and have to cut it in. It was all the old stuff. So I was bringing the current technology, constantly upgrading the technology. And he loved that. In fact, the relationship was, he wrote the movie, he directed the movie, he edited the movie. It's his movie, but he doesn't want to know anything about the technology. He just wants to come in and play.
Yeah.
So that was great symbiotic relationship. I had the latest, coolest, whatever. He came over to my house. Oh, that's really cool. Listen. Oh, that's really cool. Listen. And I had a relationship with the manufacturers. Dave Smith, Sequential Circus, Dave Rossum, Emu. That I knew these guys.
Yeah.
And every time something came out, I gave them feedback. Right? How about this? Oh, Dave, how about do a thing here? And they put it in. And it wasn't like I was going to get paid for it. It was like I was there to just make things better.
Yeah.
For improvement. It was done with no expectations.
All these movies, really set a tone for how. Let's just take the horror genre. That everything you did with the Halloween, the soundtracks, how it sets the feel for the next stuff that's coming out. Really, I mean, it's amazing. And I want to kind of go back to last night because you brought a groove to all these tunes. Mm-hmm. You were pretty funky, man. Franklin was killing it, and I'll give a shout out to obviously Artesia Pro who provided the electronic drum set. Most drummers don't like electronic drum sets, but Franklin seemed to enjoy it so much he wants to get connected to them. So I'm going to help him do that.
Good.
What was the inspiration for adding that funky feel, the drums, the EDM 4 on the floor stuff? What made you think of doing that? Because a lot of people would have just went more, like you said, more symphonic.
Well, the two impetuses. One, I did the original Synthplex that we had in 2019.
2019, yeah.
And I played solo.
Okay.
Pretty much
what you did.
A similar set.
Yeah.
Right. And Boddicker says, hey, take it up a notch. Why don't you get some musicians and make more of a band out? So that was the initial do it. And so I had to cut my set down, but I chose all the cues that are pretty much have beat.
Yeah.
As opposed to just orchestral. There's a couple moments where we dropped the beat and we went spacey, or horror, or whatever you want to call it. But so there was a beat through the whole thing. And so I met Franklin, 15 years ago. And as soon as I met him, I said, he's my man. And we stayed in touch. And so this was a chance to invite Franklin. Steve Donato, I've known since the days of Kurzweil. He's a great player and he knows this tech. And actually, he kind of jumped in at the last minute. Another fellow, Larry, was going to help me out, but Larry just moved and he got a job with the Spokane Symphony, so he wasn't available. And then I invited Russell Brower. Yeah. And Russell Brower has been my friend since the day. And he was like the little curly blonde-haired kid down the street that had a memory mode, or poly mode. Memory mode. And he was a Disney kid and he did his own thing. Eventually, he became one of the main composers at Blizzard. So all these guys have their own stats. So they're my friends. I invited them to make the band. So when I edited the set down, I'm running in Logic. I'm using a track that I created, which is the original soundtrack for the movies, and a video that goes with it that has the images from that particular movie for that scene.
Yeah.
Right. But I also had a lady in Australia, Jay Boyd, modify the video to do a VJ on it. So it wasn't like just watching the movie. It was already artistically manipulated video.
There was some effects. It was super special. I mean, honestly, I think you could take this and do something like what Danny Elfman did with, A Nightmare Before Christmas and some of his other score over at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean,
I would love to do that.
Yeah. We have to talk offline. I might actually have a place in San Diego for you.
Great. Well, I'm a pretty humble guy. So I haven't really exploited my own what I got. I just keep doing gigs, right? But I think it's far enough along, and I'm more senior now. It's time to make something out of that beyond just doing gigs for movies. So I'm up for it for sure. I'm a rock and roller. I love to play. You saw me play.
You
got out and rocked out.
You got the guitar out and everything, so that is awesome. You had the Sgt. Pepper type-esque jacket, although it was really more edgier.
That was my Halloween jacket.
Yeah, that was edgy. So we were talking technology. We'll kind of wrap this up here. Have you had a chance to go on the floor and have you seen anything that you're like, wow, that's super cool, other than our Centrance recorder that we're using right now?
That might tell you. I haven't really purged it, but there was one guy, Eric Nederlander. he has a controller he made where he's using a touch-sensitive screen,
Yeah.
and he put in a little harness so you could pick it up like a guitar. But it can either be a keyboard or a guitar interface, and then there's another touchpad for triggering things and stuff like that. But there's Jordan Rudess has a thing that he showed me that you can bend between notes and all comes back.
Are you talking about GeoShred?
Yeah, GeoShred.
Yeah.
So it's another something in that column, but his own thing, and it was so cool. Like you could take 4 fingers and touch the C note, trigger 4 voices, and then stretch across, and each voice was independently panned and pitched. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it is an amazing piece of software / gear.
Yeah, and he's a one guy. I mean, this is why we come to these kind of shows. It's the little guy that had the cool idea, and he just made one for himself to show.
Yeah.
You know, that's when when we used to go to NAMM. I used to go down in the ghetto, down below.
Yeah.
I mean, the Roland and
they didn't have
Yamaha.
that this year.
Yeah, I mean, that was to go look for those guys and see what's bubbling up from underneath. So Synthplex has that here. All the mod guys, all the guys. I'll say it's esoteric. It may not be a big money maker project, but they believe, they love. They're expressing themselves artistically and in technology. I love it.
Yeah. This is good stuff. Well, Alan, thank you very much for joining us at Synthplex 2022. We're looking forward to next year, and maybe out in a city near you doing the score, that soundtrack that powered our horror movie lives.
Well, I'd love to do it. If there's a promoter out there that thinks they can do something with it, let's talk.
Awesome. Stay tuned for another Synthplex 2022 podcast, and maybe we'll be moving on to 2023 soon. All right, thank you.
All right.